We had tons of information shared by Karuna. And part of the reason why I asked him to share was that so that we could know how far the subject of reality, particularly the nature of reality, can take us. If we were to sit in a cave and that's all we had to think about was that, and we had these ways of knowing how to meditate on that and getting to the nature of reality, that might be something that is our life's purpose to do. But we tend to be from this Western world where working and making money and material objects and our sense, objects of our nose, mouth, touch, hearing, tasting have been the majority of our focus for our life. It hasn't been this continuum of mind. It hasn't been these different Eastern thoughts. So I wanted him to kind of introduce from his knowing experience how much a perspective can be different than ours and still sometimes make logic. It didn't all make logic. I wasn't ready to totally understand it all. But every time I take one of the classes, and he is one of my main teachers and my first teacher, he always says, even when you don't get it, just hang in there because seeds will be planted about the idea. And when you're ready, it will go, oh, that's what he was talking about. Here comes smell. That's what he meant when he said that. And so I wanted him to be the one that introduced these. Hello, Simone. I wanted him to be the one to introduce these giant ideas to us because I'm not qualified, but they're there and they're intriguing and they're interesting. Another reason was to see how other perspectives help us see things differently and begin to contemplate the way we see reality. We could potentially imagine that if we saw it in a different way, that we could change our own reality. So I don't know about you, but I'm more like, no, that person is just like this. I mean, for a lot of my life, that was my thought process. And now I can start to say, wait a minute, if I'm learning that my mind is the experiencer and that that person is kind of empty of something until I put something on them, maybe if I put a different thing on them, they would appear to me as a more pure being, as a more lovable being, as a more loving being. So those were kind of my reasons why bringing Karuna in, I thought would be beneficial for us. Now, Karuna spoke of the first key teachings in Buddhism, which I am pretty familiar with, if a beginner can be familiar with these subjects. And that is the Four Noble Truths. Okay. We try to word them differently. As Karuna says, if we get good at teaching Buddhist thoughts and ideas, we will be able to explain them to our parents. We'll know them well enough where we can create a convention that we know our parents know, where we could explain it to them. They don't have to believe it, but they can follow what we're thinking or what we're talking about. So the first noble truth is what Buddhists call the truth of suffering. Now, I had a real aversion to that word when I first learned it. Suffering, oh my God, if this is what this is about, I don't want to learn this subject. My more comfortable way to understand it myself was there are problems in this world, or everything isn't perfect. That's my first noble truth. And I knew because of my own experience of discomfort in emotions, that there was something that wasn't perfect. There was something that was suffering, that was a problem. There was something there I wanted to change. Maybe that could be another way to say it. Instead of the truth of suffering, there are things we wish we could change so that we had better outcomes. Okay? We want to stay on the idea without changing the idea, but we can use words that present it in a different way so that we could understand the convention behind the idea. Then I took a class that was like, well, why do we say that first? Because it seems to turn people off so much. So I'm going to go into the next 3 of the 4 noble truths. The second noble truth is that suffering has a cause. Now we're going to word that in our thinking. Problems have causes. Our own discomfort didn't just happen upon us. There was a cause for it. And then, of course, enters the teaching of karma. Cause and effect. A certain action causes a certain effect. The first thing they teach us is an apple seed that gets planted will not grow a pomegranate tree. An apple seed will have the potential to grow an apple tree and not a different tree. So each seed that we plant in something, we try to understand what would be the potential of watering and putting soil and feeding that seed. What potential are we creating from that? The third, where we get to go from the Western mind, yes! Noble truth is that suffering can end. Problems can stop. Nirvana can be reached. Enlightenment is possible. So all different ways of saying the same thing. Okay? Now, I was like, why don't they say enlightenment is possible first? Because then we can be like, sweet, I'm in, I'm coming back to this next class. What's my next step? But we have to understand a truth of our own reality, which is we're not there. We are not enlightened beings. We are not all-knowing. We are not experiencing nirvana, long-term, sustainable nirvana right now because of something, because, rule number 2, of something. And noble truth number 4 is that there is a path. Okay, so the truth of suffering, suffering has a cause, suffering can end, and there is a path. And we can word that in ways that just work best for us. We're here so that we can try to learn a different way of seeing things and then experience a better mind and a happier mind. So the Dalai Lama always says, our purpose in life is happiness. And I'm going to add that he says, pleasure is what's called the near enemy of happiness. Pleasure is not happiness. And the way we test that is to say, if I did this thing that's causing me a good feeling as many times as I possibly could, would it still cause me that pleasurable feeling? And Robina, Venerable Robina, uses the example of a chocolate cake. I ate my first piece of chocolate cake. It felt like nirvana. I ate my second piece of chocolate cake. It didn't feel as good. My fifth piece of chocolate cake, I went right back to noble truth number one. There is suffering. Like, it wasn't even good anymore. Okay, so that's pleasure. That's not happiness. Maybe an example of happiness would be I practice generosity. When I do so wisely, I feel that I am able to give. I feel that I don't experience scarcity. I feel a constricted heart have more space. I feel myself influential in somebody else's life in a positive way. I create more positivity. Now, in Buddhism, they always say that there are two wings on the bird of Buddhism. One is wisdom. The other is compassion. And the wisdom wing helps us not become a doormat with our compassion. I'm going to keep giving and giving and giving to this person who doesn't care about me giving to them. And I'm going to just do that because the more generous I am, the more virtuous I am, right? Compassion alone won't get us there. Compassion with wisdom will get us there. Nathan.
So you've used the word suffering multiple times. And when you say that, does that, like, not suffering like you hate life? I'm saying like is in the Buddhist term that is not being enlightened. Is that what that is? Or what's the
Mental
term of enlightened?
suffering.
Okay, yeah. So the mental suffering is not reaching that enlightenment.
Remember when Karuna was saying Gaza is not suffering? And I'm going, let me back that up a little bit, guys. Like, right? It is very hard for us to come close to considering Gaza not suffering. Right? And I can't explain his idea behind that entirely. But if mental suffering didn't exist in the first place, there is the high potential that we would not cause suffering to somebody else. Okay, so that mental suffering is where it began before we said the way to fix this is to harm people, to put it mellowly. Okay? Okay? Okay. So as Sandro and I were talking today a little bit, I was telling him that, you know, I had a teacher, Alexa, she was my mentor in my 2-year program, who said, so how's your meditating? And I'm like, I read another book, you know? He's like, so how's your meditating? I'm like, I took another class. So how is your meditating? Well, I try to get to it. Sometimes when I'm falling asleep at night, I can get to it. She's like, the juice is in the meditating. It's the hardest part. We're learning, you know, if we're smart in America, we're all that. But all that doesn't necessarily bring happiness. Just knowing all this stuff. But experiencing non-suffering brings a heck of a lot of happiness. So, with your permission, I'd like us to do the hard part together now for a little bit. Okay? And I have a beautiful guided meditation that I have from Insight Timer. Love that app. And I'm gonna hold off on check-ins because I think we have a lot to check in with from these last 3 classes, and I'm gonna do this first. I picked this meditation tonight because I feel like, I'm gonna read this. I feel like we may be feeling confused after the different ideas that we heard in the past 3 classes. I'm going to repeat, which are now on YouTube / our Mettaverse, which is METTAVERSE. They're under the guest speaker section and the classes by subject. Do like and subscribe, please. I think it's important for us to just stop for a moment and realize how much we would really just like to know how to help our own being be okay. I think we are aware of noble truth number one. There are some problems. Things aren't perfect. We aren't living in nirvana. I think we're not so aware of the causes. I think we're not so aware that it's possible to stop the problems. And I think that we're not so aware of what is the path. And I think that this meditation will help us have a tool to begin taking care of ourselves. It's called I Love You, I'm Listening. I invite you to feel gratitude that we're all in this position right now, beginning to know how to take steps towards our own nirvana or lack of suffering. To be in this position amongst all people is very rare. We're fortunate and we have some tools, and many people are not so fortunate. And I'd like to ask you to take just one moment to consider some gratitude for where we are right now, together with each other, considering these really beautiful thoughts, like it's possible to ease our own mind and ease our own being. Allow that gratitude to be felt. Sometimes it really comes in and it becomes a little overwhelming how lucky we really are. And if you need any support in that, just take a look at each other right here. Like really acknowledge Stacy's with us. Nathan's with us. Marie's here. Kirsten's here. Kevin's here. Simone is here. Alessandro is here. We're together, you guys. It's pretty amazing. Thank you for being here. I'm going to start our meditation, and I would like you to tell me about the volume when I first start. Make sure we're okay.
I love you. I am listening.
This is going to be guided by her, not me.
I love you.
Sarah Blondin, Blondin. Can you hear it okay?
When we live in a state of distraction,
I'm going to close my eyes and experience it. You may want to turn off your screen. It could be a tearjerker.
Self within us that needs love and attention. We are often more busy showing up for others in this way that we neglect to care for our own hearts. And this creates a type of separation and alienation from our source of love. I find one of the most potent and empowering ways to realign with our hearts and ourself, our deepest self, is by saying these two simple lines to ourselves. I love you. I am listening. I remember when I first started saying this to myself, it was almost as if I felt a rupture in my heart, as if I had finally connected some missing link, as if I was brought directly back down to earth. And with it came a flood of tenderness and sorrow and joy. So I'd like to do that with you now in the quiet of this moment. Let's come gently into our bodies, treating ourselves as if we are entering some old and ancient temple, holding ourselves in this moment with reverence. It's really just an attitude, a mental state, type of awareness that really recognizes how precious we are, how precious our life is. Settling down now into any position that feels comfortable for you. And we begin every meditation with a focusing on the breath. We're not changing, manipulating the breath, we're simply becoming aware of it. Feeling it brush against our nostrils. Feeling our ribs and our chest rise and fall. And feeling the cells in your body kind of settle like sand. After being swirled, they kind of fall to the bottom of the sea. And after watching your breath, just really feel the body sinking into itself. And we sink deeper and deeper with our breath. Marrying our awareness to our breath, to the often neglected and overlooked life living in our very bodies. Breathing in, I'm my in breath. And breathing out, I'm aware of my out breath. In breath, out breath. In breath, out breath. In breath, out breath. If it feels all right to you to place both your hands over top of your heart now, I like to push a little bit so that my hand can feel the rhythm of my heartbeat, so that my palm can feel the rhythm of the heartbeat, the drum living within my chest. And now we breathe aware of its rhythm, aware of our rhythm. And bowing our head down slightly to bring our face toward our heart. As if to bring the mind down to the level of the heart. As if to quiet the mind. As if to give our full attention to this great and mysterious center, our heart. It's in this small gesture that we move into a more tender embodiment. It's in this small gesture that we kneel at the foot of our hearts and open ourselves to the source of our love, the source of our feeling, the source of our joy, our gratitude. And we lay our lives down here at the foot of our hearts. Head bowed. And if you'd like to repeat after me quietly or out loud, I love you. I am listening. I love you. I am listening. I love you. I am listening. And let whatever arises come to the surface of you without blocking or resisting. Whatever feelings, whatever thoughts, whatever emotions, let them swell. Whatever numbness, whatever grief, whatever joy. Just allow yourself to sit in the soup of your life. Do not run. Just arrive and offer all of yourself to your heart. We love our children in this way. We love our partners. We try to love each other in this way, our neighbors, strangers. But rarely do we show up to love ourselves in this way. It is in loving ourselves in this way that we nurture our soil, that we become like the sun, warming our very earth. Loving ourselves like this is like filling our own glass. And any other love we receive is just extra after this. You can relax your hands from your heart now. Settling back into your body. Feeling whatever energy has changed in you. Whether you're more grounded or a little more tender. Maybe there's space around your breath, around your body now. It wasn't there before. And let's take one deep breath in and one deep breath out in a sigh. And opening your eyes whenever you're ready. I use this practice whenever I'm feeling a little lost, disconnected, stressed. It opens an awareness that I've been maybe neglecting or ignoring, and it helps bring me back into my body, into my heart. And sometimes I hear things and sometimes I don't. Either is okay. It just redirects our consciousness to where it truly matters, where true satisfaction, love, and our highest embodiment really come from. It's just a nice way to ground back into the moment, into ourselves, so that we may show up more authentically, more clear. So I invite you to use this practice in any way, when you first wake, when you go to bed, in the middle of your day. Thank you for taking the time to practice with me today. Be well.
Mm. You ready to share something, Sandro? You look like you were going to say something.
How could you tell? I just have, I mean, I'm on board with loving yourself. I think that's a great thing. Given the Buddhist idea, can you truly love yourself if yourself doesn't exist?
Isn't that a
Your
great
consciousness
question?
does.
Say it again,
It's
Nathan.
interesting.
Your consciousness exists. That's something that exists. You
Yeah.
can love your consciousness, not your. I mean, that is kind of interesting.
Right?
My understanding of at this level in my practice, My understanding of the easiest way to know that of the self that doesn't exist is the permanent self, the non-changing self, the independent self. They don't exist. But the impermanent self, ever changing, interdependent on lots of factors and lots of experiences, does. Make sense?
Mhm.
So, but it's really hard to start saying, how do I allow myself into this? Like, what is the self that I'm bringing into this? And at this point, it's easiest for me to bring in an ever-changing, always experiencing, open, close, all that self. It's not just Denise Smith, realtor, or this thing that just is, that never changes. It translates for me into a lighter kind of energy rather than this body that just is, and this name that just is, or this reputation that just is, or becomes more flowing and ever changing, like something that's part of nature.
I think I'm trying to give myself an excuse not to look within inside, because that's the scariest part.
Thank you, Sandro. That's not easy to share. Raise your hand if you can relate to that.
I didn't really hear what he said. What did you say, Sonia?
I said, almost giving myself an excuse not to look within inside myself, because it's scary in there. That's the part you don't want to explore.
100%, yeah.
Can you relate with that at all, Nathan?
I can also say that as a teenager, right? A lot of these things, right? You're like, there's a lot of pressure from other people, like your friends, other things like that, that may think doing this and looking within yourself may be like cringe or like not cool, right? Or something like that, right? And yeah, battling battling that as well is something that I think is important. Like the people around you may think something of whatever you're doing, but you have to, you know, find it within yourself, and it's hard to do that.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for sharing that. Marie?
Oh, yeah, I was just gonna say, sometimes you just don't have to tell anybody. I mean, it's not something you have to share with people. It's so personal. It's it's your thing. And yeah, I mean, I can totally relate to what Sandra's saying. I mean, I did that for years. I used to love to just, whenever I started thinking about myself, I'd just start drinking wine, you know. You know what I mean? I mean, that's what I used to do. I don't do that anymore, but I learned how to do these things. Take practice, right? When you're, and they're hard and they're scary. And I mean, I had all kinds of things that I used to use to not look at myself, you know what I mean? And all kinds of ways of doing that. And I think it's very normal, but I think it's really wonderful that you can articulate that and say that in front of a group of people, because it is a hard thing to come to terms with, right? That you just really don't want to look at yourself because it's scary. Yeah, it is. And so you're way ahead of a lot of us in that respect, right? You already got that part. The awareness, that's so much of it. But yeah, that was really great.
My experience is that, well, there's a comedian that says, my wife, she like experiences and talks and experiences and talks and experiences and talk, right? It's like, that's me, right? That's my natural kind of thing, almost because I don't know how to experience inside. So if I can have it pass through me really fast and spit it out of me, then I don't have to have that. But if I can be brave enough, and the Dalai Lama has been asked several times, when men want to practice this type of practice, how do they not take the criticism? How do they not feel like they're being weak? And the Dalai Lama's answer is always that he cannot imagine any activity more courageous.
I agree with that completely.
Mhm.
So if somebody wants to question it, it's okay.
Mhm.
And it helps me to, you know how Karuna said in one of the classes that Siddhartha, who became Shakyamuni Buddha after he was realized, became an enlightened being, was asked to talk, like, what is it like? And he could not use conventional words to describe what enlightenment was like. He
Mm.
was in the experience of it and didn't, have you ever done something? Marie, I'm going to ask you this. I know you've made absolutely amazing, beautiful, transformational, brand new butterfly. Again, a brand new butterfly. Again, a brand new butterfly, right? When you're unfamiliar with who you know yourself as, and you're becoming this thing you wish to be, did you feel like just talking to everybody about it, or kind of just, how did you?
Yeah, no, I not for me. It's more of a retreat, to yourself, inside of yourself. And maybe I could describe myself as a little bit more introverted. Some people might wish to, and that I think it has to do with the way they express themselves. But for me, I do those kind of things normally in solitude or with someone that I feel very safe with, like you. I did a lot of things with you, because I felt safe with you, and we could talk about things that I didn't always talk about with other people. So it depends on, of course, there are people that you want to share these things with that can help you along your journey, but a lot of it is done alone. The self-reflection, the deep self-reflection, is done on, for me, on my own. Yeah.
Marie has helped me be able to look at my own family and my role within my family because of her work that she's already done within that. Right? She's gone and said, this book kind of helped if you're interested in it at all. And oh, by the way, I filled out some things in there that I wouldn't share with everybody. Thank you. Right? Sharing your own personal growth with somebody, we have to be very cautious. I had a therapist one time that said, don't lay your pearls in front of somebody who will crush them.
Mhm.
And I'm hoping I've never crushed your pearls. Or if I have, that I'm sorry. Right? So sometimes it just, at all costs, we just want something to be different. It doesn't matter what anybody thinks about it.
Mhm.
And it's okay.
I would like to say that I think that I was the exact opposite, like 2 years ago, where I would try not like and not people random people, but I would try to talk to these things about, with like some of my close friends. Um, and with that in my mind came, and especially like still as like a person that's young, came a lot of like I feel like I got humbled in a way, like about talking about these things about myself because a lot of people that are young don't necessarily have these things figured out, right? So they feel
Or old.
kind of, or exactly, right? So they feel kind of offended in a way or take something the wrong way. And I learned it real quick that like I had to fully appreciate this to myself and not necessarily, and of course there's people like Sandro that I very much talk to about the way that I think things because I know that he's not going to judge very hard, but it's something that I found is that people judge very much so. And um that helped me fully make me, enjoy it to myself. Like that humbleness, that feeling that those other people gave me helped me do it or appreciate it for myself more.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so when we get into the beginning practice of meditation, we become this being, energy, person, self, something, becomes something that's trying to cause stillness, which is extremely difficult. Stillness in our mind and stillness in our body is very, very hard. And as we veer off of that stillness, we start, oh, I saw you going over there. And we want to judge ourselves. How come you can't just keep your mind here? Man, you're super distracted. And all those, the extreme words are in Buddhism, delusional mindsets. To not nurture that being that is intending on being better is a delusional mindset. So instead, we say, I'm veering off. It's normal. Lots and lots of people do that, and it's okay. And I'm back with my breath. And I'm here, and I'm listening, and I'm trying. And we do it again. And we inevitably veer off again. And we be that voice that maybe Nathan wishes he could hear back if he wants to share this with one of his friends. Like maybe it's I don't know that I can relate to exactly what you're going through, but I can be open to sometime relating to it. Or I see this benefiting you. And while I might not be ready to do the practice myself, I'm experiencing joy through watching you feel better. Right? So then in meditation, in the experience of meditation, where, quote from Karuna, where the mind is trained is when we're meditating. That's where we train our own mind. We can train ourselves to be the most loving parent we've ever had. We can train ourselves to be the best friend we've ever had, the biggest supporter we've ever had. And then we can sometimes I've been able to just super look forward to going into that retreat land of meditation, because I know that that parent, that nurturer, and that supporter are sitting there waiting for me. And there are some times after that I completely lose sight of all three of those good points of view. And so we sit. And what I liked in that meditation we did tonight was, don't run, don't get up, right? Allow the feelings you're feeling when you're telling yourself, I love you, I'm listening, to be there. Just be with it. Be with it. It's okay. To encourage us to have a practice at home in between these meetings and sessions and beautiful time together, I want to offer something that Dan Siegel has written a book on the mind. I remember it was like 34 hours listening to the audiobook. Is very long. But he has this example of kind of how to meditate that's the shortcut. And I like shortcuts. That's a good one. Just a start. So he painted this picture that was for us to like imagine that we're in a meandering stream. Okay. So we're inviting the impermanent self. moving down the stream, not sitting in a lake. So we're inviting that movement down a stream, and we're imagining fairly peaceful water. And on one bank of that stream is chaos. And I'm going to give you his definition of chaos. Daniel J. Siegel defines chaos in the context of the mind as a state of disorganization and turbulence. This can manifest in thoughts, emotions, and behaviors that are erratic, unpredictable, and lacking coherence. He often contrasts chaos with rigidity. We're going to do that one too. Emphasizing the importance of finding a balanced state of integration for optimal mental health. Now, rigidity, in his definition, is a state where the mind is overly controlled and inflexible. In this state, thoughts, emotions, and behaviors are predictable, repetitive, and they lack adaptability. Okay? Rigidity is the opposite of chaos, and both are seen as undesirable extremes. He advocates for an integrated mind, which is flexible, adaptive, coherent, energized, and stable, avoiding chaos and avoiding rigidity. So you imagine a river, one bank is chaos, and the other bank is rigidity. And we're in our little canoe or kayak or whatever we feel is the best, safest vessel for us to be navigating this stream. And we see ourselves pulling over to, it's just easier if I do the same thing every day because I kind of know what to expect, rigidity, and going, what if I were to change that just a little bit today and I could become a little bit more adaptable? And then we go into, I'm spazzing out, I don't know what to do, my thoughts are all over the place and I'm kind of freaking, into, I think maybe I'll just try to calm myself down and just stay in the middle of the stream a little bit, knowing that they are opposites, so that when we are too far to one side, we do apply the opposite. If we're being too rigid, we apply an open-minded, free-flowing thought process. When we're too chaotic, we apply more routine, more outline, more organization. And we try not to get too pulled to one side or the other. So when we're at home and we're breathing, and we're saying 5 minutes, 5 minutes is what I've got now, and I'm not going to judge myself. I start getting very antsy and anxious. If I go beyond that, I'm going to do my 5. And we put a little timer on and we try to do our 5. And when we're in that, we try to stay in the middle of the stream. One more thing that was really helpful for me at home with a practice was, again, Karuna. And he said, practice of breathing in, out is 1. Breathing in, out is 2. Okay, so a full breath and go up to 9 and back from 9 without being distracted. It's like, yeah, okay. But it's fun to, at least if you're laying in bed at night and you haven't like gotten on a cushion, or it's wintertime and it's just uncomfortable to get into a routine meditative state and pose and all that stuff. At least you can just say, all right, well, let me just try to count to 9 with my breath. And I remember going 1, 2, 3, like I do it super fast. I did it 9, I shortened it so it could be easier to be within that without being distracted because the time was less. But after a while, when you find the pleasure or happiness in it, then you start extending your breaths to see if you can keep it that long. That's an offer for home practice of the really hard part, which is the meditation part. And now I want to thank you guys so much for the main part of our class tonight, which was this class. Thank you. I'm going to first dedicate you guys the time that we just did the hard part. It's super hard to put love to our own self. It's so much easier to put it to somebody else. It's super easy to watch somebody else and see how clear they are, and it's not easy to do for our own self. So I just want to dedicate the merit that we've created by coming together here and not choosing to stay numb and stay unaware and do our best to try to become aware. I want to dedicate that merit to all beings, that they may get closer to stopping the causes for suffering, that they may get closer to nirvana, and that may all of us included, be free from suffering.